We are back. It's Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. I promised you guys that Be Right Back screen would not be up too long. Looks like we didn't lose anyone. Sometimes people get freaked out when that thing goes up, and I'm not really sure why that is. I guess another reason to not freak out is now that it is week 6, I can't get through this matchups thing alone. We had to bring in someone that I think that can go through this probably a lot better than me, but also we need to bounce some ideas off them. So you guys know this time of the week, each and every week, we have Rich Hribar with us, author of the worksheet at sharpfootballanalysis.com. Rich Hribar, man, I'll say this, and we were just talking about it quickly as I was fixing some of your crop stuff, but if things go wrong, our schedules are so tight throughout the week to make sure all the content gets out, to make sure all the research gets done that needs to get done. If one or two things go wrong, it can set back your entire week. So now we had football yesterday. You're trying to catch up on stuff this morning. How are you doing, man? I normally ask you how your week was last week, and I guess I'm curious about that also. But man, how are you holding up, man? Week 6 already feels like week 16 already.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people tweeting last night oh, why can't we do this every week? Just have football every day of the week. And
Terrible.
I'm like, I'm like, this is the worst idea ever. I'm behind on writing up games. I've got, a schedule. Like I said, my typical Wednesday routine was thrown off because I had to go back and do games based on the information that we got from last night and those teams that were playing last night. So I'm not even really registered that it's Wednesday afternoon. I DM'd you. I was like, hey, I'm just running behind. I'm running my hair on fire here. But we made it. We're adjusted. We're calibrating. Let's hopefully that, COVID doesn't impact, many weeks in the future like it has these past 2 weeks. But we got through it, though. We made the best of it.
It's tough to complain, man. We got it pretty good. We have football right now. It could be a lot worse, man. So let's not waste any more time. This week, I guess looking at the running back position overall to start the week, I'm like, dude, where am I going to spend salary? We have no Zeke, we have no Kamara, no CMC, at least for one more week. So what are we doing at running back this week? Anything stand out to you?
And probably no Dalvin Cook.
That too. There you go.
So you remove all the top, money makers off the board this week. Zeke does play, but it's not main slate. So what are we going to do? We always love to go in and spend on salary. And this year, wide receiver has not been worth, a damn paying up for anyways, outside of DeAndre Hopkins. So where are we going to go this week? And, we typically, when we look for running backs, I think you have a pretty similar checklist to me. Is we're looking for bell cow running backs, guys that can't be scripted out. They have dual usage. No matter what happens in the game, this guy's going to be on the field. He can either catch passes playing from behind or bang out carries as the team has the lead. We're looking for guys that have goal line carries, guys that get the bulk of the crux of the goal line opportunities to their team. And then we're looking for typically home favorites. There are not a lot of these guys on the board that check all these boxes this week, so we've got to kind of wade into some waters that we're not the most comfortable with, but we've got some good running backs on the board from a matchup stance that we can run through here. And I think it starts with the guy you hit on, is discount Christian McCaffrey. We got to come with a better nickname for him, though.
We do, right? He deserves that at this point, I think.
Yeah, we've got Mike Davis in a revenge game. He's technically on the 2020 salary cap for the Bears this season right now. And, we've talked about him last week, being underpriced. They hiked him up again, but it's still, I think, a little low for the scoring output he's providing. He's had 91, 111, 149 yards from scrimmage, 21, 21, and 25 touches. He's got a touchdown in all 3 games. He's forced a missed tackle at the highest rate in the NFL, 36% of his touches. And he's got 30 catches over the past 4 games, as he came in filled in that fourth quarter for Christian McCaffrey. The Bears have been beatable on the ground. They're allowing 15.1 rushing points per game. They haven't faced a bevy of pass catchers, and it doesn't really matter even from a matchup stance because the offense is predicated on getting the ball to Mike Davis and these backs out of the backfield. So I think his target floor is safe as well. So we could start with him again. Then we've got to kind of go into some of these guys you and I aren't the most comfortable playing. These guys that maybe have a ward or two. And I think the first guy is probably the most expensive guy everyone's going to be drawn to is Derrick Henry. He hasn't really been hyper efficient to start this year. Yards per carries and everything, but he has not really gotten any explosive runs for us. He's got 20 touches in all 4 games, but he's got a great matchup as a home favorite. The Texans are allowing 21.3 rushing points per game to opposing backfields, 5.2 yards per carry to opposing backs. 41.4% of the yardage that has been gained on the Houston Texans so far has come via rushing. That's the largest share in the league. So we know what we're going to get out of this Titans offense and how they want to operate. So we can pay for those rushing touches if we can get them, but they've got to come with touchdowns with Derrick Henry. We've got another guy who people are kind of jumping off on, especially from a redraft stance. That's a huge home favorite in a great matchup, but no one's wanted to play after the first couple weeks of playing. That's Jonathan Taylor.
Oh God.
He's had just
Don't do that.
he's had
Don't do this to
14.
me again.
I'm doing it, man. 14, 18, 14 touches the past 3 games after he had 28 touches that first game. But on the positive end, last week he had 55% of the team snaps. That was his highest share since week 2. He also has all the goal line carries except for one, since that week 2 taking over after Marlon Mack's injury. And then he's a huge home favorite against a Cincinnati team that ranks 25th in rushing points allowed per game. They've allowed over 100 yards rushing to backfields in 4 of the 5 games this season. They just lost DJ Reader for the season to IR. They did get Geno Atkins back last week, but he only played 19 snaps. It's kind of one of those. In a few weeks ago, we were in a spot with Joe Mixon, and it's just a spot to trust. You got a 7-point home favor against a bad run D. I think we have to swallow it. And if it can't sell you on Jonathan Taylor, a guy people did want to believe on, how about I sell you on a guy that people don't believe in? That's David Montgomery.
Yeah.
Since losing Tariq Cohen for the season, Montgomery has been an actual bell cow back. 86%, 82% of the team offensive snaps the past few games. He's had all 30 of the Chicago backfield touches, 100%. He's also run 35 and 31 pass routes, caught 10 of 14 targets in those games. And his last 2 matchups have been tough. He's faced teams that were 1st and 8th in yards per carry allowed to running backs. And he's week 3 matchup against the Falcons. They're actually 10th. But this week he gets a Carolina defense that's 27th yards per carry allowed to backs. They're 30th in rushing points allowed to backfields. They tricked us in that 1 week. They stopped Kenyon Drake, or maybe Kenyon Drake stopped himself. But right back, they allowed the first 100-yard game that Todd Gurley's had in 21 regular season games last week. Now they're going to be without Brian Burns. K'Wan Short is injured already start this week in practice. So an already bad run defense is going to be missing 2 key components. And David Montgomery is getting that bell cow status. And then the last guy kind of, is a little bit, under the radar from a redraft stance. I think people have undervalued the start he's had, and that's Myles Gaskin. Not the most sexiest of guys, but he hasn't even had 100 yards yet in a game this season. But he hasn't been lower than an RB3 any week. He's had 20 touches in 2 of his past 3 games. The one thing he was missing was just getting goal line work, and they made Jordan Howard a healthy and active last week, and he immediately cashed in his first opportunity to score a touchdown at the goal line. Huge home favorite against the Jets team. They're 28th in rushing points allowed per game. He is 3rd amongst all running backs in target share, so he's a little bit of that PPR boost that you're going to get on DraftKings at 5,400. And you might want to check to see if Howard is inactive again for those touches, but those are some running backs that kind of give us some guys to play with early in the week as we wait on the Dalvin Cook news and try to kind of shape some of our rosters and GPP ownership.
Reebs, you know what I like about you, man? You just go. I can just sit back here. I can produce. I don't got to say a word. You just give us the answers to the test, and we just go off and running from there. I'll say this, just to touch on a few things quickly that you were mentioning. Anytime you can get paid by both teams, I think that's a huge positive. So love that for Mike Davis. I think that's the only reason to play him, right? Someone in the chat also mentioned maybe he's mini McCaffrey. I don't hate that. Maybe there's better ones out there, but I don't hate that. Decent matchup against Chicago. I think both of these guys you can play in this game. David Montgomery, you mentioned the spot for him, just with how involved he's been without Tariq Cohen, just huge. This Panthers defense has allowed 43 completions to running backs, which is tied for the most in the league, 28% target share to running backs, which is the second most. So love the spot for Montgomery. He's someone that I haven't played a ton of, I guess, historically, but this is a week where we're going to have to get a little bit more creative, I think, at running back. And in terms of Derrick Henry, I think he'll end up being super popular just on recency bias alone. We see him just absolutely toss Josh Norman last night. So, I guess, how much do you think that's going to increase his ownership? It's got to be at least 5%, right? Like, you see him just dump some guy like that. That was one of the best things I've ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Derrick Henry's a guy, I think, that he doesn't fit the archetype you and I typically like to pursue, but he is kind of one of those guys that's just a unicorn in a sense that people like watching him play. We complain about running backs don't matter when teams run the ball a lot, but people like to watch Derrick Henry run the ball a lot.
And that guy, he cost me so much money last year because I have this thing, and we're similar in a lot of ways in the way we approach running back, like you said, but he just didn't catch passes, but he would just completely bury me almost every week off these crazy long runs. So it didn't matter. He's going to touch the ball 30 times and not get any catches. Now he's been a little bit more involved, which is, why wouldn't you get the ball into that guy's hands and just run people over? But I am coming around on the Derrick Henry thing as a fantasy option for sure. And there's not a lot really to pay up for. I guess before we move on to this game that you want to talk about, if Dalvin Cook is out, Alexander Madison's all the way up at 7,200. like it's expensive. There's times, I guess I have a little bit of bias too, because I basically I went to that game. I can't remember if it was Thursday night football or Monday night football. Dalvin Cook was out last year. Alexander Madison was the absolute stone chalk. Got like 24 touches. Didn't do a lot with them. He's been a guy that's been decent in the preseason. He's been decent in kind of like a change of pace role when Dalvin Cook is out there. But what do you think about him all the way up at 7,200?
He actually missed both games that Dalvin Cook was out last year.
Maybe I'm thinking of Boone then. I'm probably thinking of Boone. There you go. Oh, this is better. This is great news. I can still play Madison then. Awesome.
Yeah, so he actually hasn't scorched our earth yet when we've had him in these spots like Mike Boone did. But at the end of the year, Mike Boone, remember, he came back and was awesome like the next week.
That's what it was. No one played him the next week. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm glad that I just had that straight wrong.
But you seen him last week. I mean, he rushed 20 times for 112 yards. He catched the ball a little bit too. He had 24 yards on 3 catches. Atlanta, like I said, they're good in like from a yards per carry basis, but that doesn't matter when you have a Vikings team as a home favorite, because what do the Vikings want to do? Like if the game script's in control here, it doesn't matter if Alexander Madison's getting 2 yards or 8 yards a carry. They're going to keep doing what they do. I think that's one of my problems with trying to like stream Kirk Cousins this week, even though the Falcons have just been getting bludgeoned through the air as well. Is that just the Vikings might just put it in the air like 20 times this week, or like even like an Adam Thielen or a Justin Jefferson, who are in phenomenal spots this week. This really could be a week where our just volume is capped from the Vikings stance, because the first 4 weeks of the season, Kirk Cousins threw 27 times or fewer. Yep. So that could be one of these games. The Falcons really just have not been holding their water. We talked about them last week. Without Julio Jones, Matt Ryan just hasn't been playing well, and you're going to need them to do some offensive action themselves, have this back and forth for that passing game for Minnesota to hit. But the running game is going to be, kind of lockstep throughout, no matter what the script is for them. They're going to run the ball. So, I mean, it's going to be hard to get away from Madison if it's just a full green light, not Dalvin Cook, which would make sense because they're on bye next week. If he's not 100%, then just, mothball him, bring him back after the bye.
Yeah, I don't expect to see Cook this week. I think that even just at 7,200, Madison's a guy that we can definitely consider in this game. I actually think that Cousins is going to start to get a little bit of steam throughout this week. I think people want to talk themselves into that. I went through it a little bit on the first look video that went up earlier this morning. Irv Smith also is the stone min if you wanted to go there at tight end, which is interesting. But Reebs, so now let's move on. We always want to try and find at least one game that could kind of offer some fantasy fireworks. A lot of people, just like a game that people aren't talking about, whether it's in DFS or the betting markets. It sounds like this week for you, that game is Detroit and Jacksonville. Tell me why.
We usually try to pick one that's like a little more off the radar. And we got a little chalky last week, so at least, try to go to the, someone that's not super sexy like the Lions. No one's ever excited about a Matt Patricia team, but, they've got a great matchup here, against the Jaguars. The Jaguars have just been, straight up dog walked the last 3 weeks by the Dolphins, the Bengals, and the Texans. 3 teams that are not, subjectively or objectively good at any level. And so you've got Stafford, coming off of this bye. He wasn't really popping for people before the bye either. He did have a QB1 performance his last game before the bye, but he's going to get the last ranked defense in expected points from a passing stance. They're 26th in points per allowed from the passing points per game. They've allowed a league high 8.8 yards per pass attempt. They also are another team just entering this week are walking dead. They've got so many guys on either IR or we've got to wait to see if they play. Josh Allen, CJ Henderson, DJ Hayden's been put on IR. And it's a defense that already wasn't good to begin with, and they've got a bunch of these injuries. We always try to tell people, emphasize, don't just follow the skill guy injuries. Follow these defensive injuries as well, because they can lead you to a lot of bread and butter here. And then we've got Kenny Galladay, who, had a touchdown in his first 2 games back before the bye. The Jaguars, because they, like I said, they've been getting dog walked by teams. They're only 16th in targets of face to opposing wideouts, but they are 30th in catch rate allowed. They're 21st in yards per target to the position. They're not a team to be scared of. We talked about C.J. Anderson potentially missing. Galladay's a guy who gets the kind of targets we want to pursue, especially, even in cash, he's playable, but the guy that could catch 2 touchdowns. He gets targets downfield. Then we have, Marvin Jones, who's in the exact same spot that Brandon Cooks was in last week. Marvin Jones has been out here exercising. He's run a pass route on 97% of the Detroit dropbacks this year. That's the 3rd highest rate in the NFL, but he has just 12 catches in the season. It's kind of the same exact spot Brandon Cooks is in. Brandon Cooks is out here running routes, and then he's going to get this lined up in this matchup and hit. So
he's exercising. I'm stealing that, Reeves. Yeah. That's amazing.
I used to use that. I brought that back. I used to use that on Chris Hogan.
So good.
He's out here just running, getting wind sprints. And then, they also have a tight end that we, like to kind of chase in tournaments. He's not ever a great cash game play because his targets are never high. But TJ Hawkinson, he basically averages an end zone target per game played with Matt Stafford. And then he's been running, more routes per drop back as well. And then one of the running backs we didn't bring up when I was just talking about the running backs on the other side is, James Robinson is in a good spot. I mean, he's not a favorite, but he's at home. Against the team that, has really struggled against running back production this year in the Detroit Lions. We've seen Robinson, even the last 2 weeks in blowouts, he's had 21, 18 touches. He's still getting enough viable touches for us. He's run 24 and 21 pass routes the past 2 weeks after just 11, 13, and 14 through 3 games. So he's getting extended run in the passing game as well. And then Detroit's allowing a league high 22.3 rushing points per game to running backs. So we know he's not a guy that's going to get scripted out of the game because he hasn't yet, especially, the last 3 weeks when they've just been getting work down the field. So he's a way to run it back. And if you want to get interesting, you can follow this DJ Shark news and see what's going on with Laviska Shenault, who I know also has a hamstring injury, but he's had one for a couple weeks. And he's not only has he played, but he's getting extended burn. He now leads the team in targets and receptions in the season. He ran a season high pass route on 9.1% of snaps. That was a high on the team. And then the Lions have been an equal opportunity defense. I mean, last time we seen them on the field, they were giving up, 2 top 24 games to Emmanuel Sanders and Traquan Smith. Andy Isabella had a 2-touchdown game on him. Anthony Miller got over on him, the only game he's gotten over all year. So, I mean, that game has some potential to have, a lot of dropbacks on probably both sides of the ball because the Lions really aren't a functional running team, even though they will try to hand it off to Adrian Peterson, I'm sure a surplus number of times in that game. But that's a fun game, I think, to look at right now where it's not the individual pieces don't carry a lot of allure, but the game could definitely get over.
First off, this is a game that stood out to me right away also. But I will play devil's advocate here because this is a game that we're trying to say that's a little bit under the radar, could get popular as kind of smart people are talking about it throughout the week. But like on the other side of this thing, I think that pace is a concern if you think that Minshew can't keep up on the other side of this game. If Jacksonville has their way, they're going to slow this thing down. So that's a concern. Also, the Lions played the league's highest rate of man coverage. Minshew struggles against man coverage historically. So his yards per attempt is 8.0. Normally 5.8 it drops off to against man coverage in his career. His completion percentage, 69%, drops off to 49% against man coverage. Also, we talk about Robinson as a play, and I was with you. Like that's one of the ones that I really liked. It's kind of an under-the-radar running back play. He's seen 13 targets this year against zone, only 2 targets this year against man. So that's the other side of it. I think there are some concerns, but I mostly agree with you. I think that this game, if it does end up going under the radar, love Kenny Galladay, love all of those plays. So, Rich, anything else before, I guess, what else is going on? The worksheet, obviously. Anything else you want to plug? I want to give you an opportunity to if there is.
Yeah, check out the worksheet over there at Sharp Football Analysis. And then, I'm doing, the 2 podcasts, Pre-Stat Motion is a fantasy podcast I do at Chad Scott. And then Sharp Angles I do with Cleve TA and Dan Pizzuta, which is more of a betting, real football take cast kind of a show there. So definitely if you get an opportunity, check those out. Hit us with a, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff like you preach here. And then just, hey, you can always find me on the Joe Holka Show, 3:15 every Wednesday. You know the drill.
Love it, man. Appreciate it. Definitely check out Rich's podcast, everything else that he has going on, and then follow him on Twitter if you aren't already at LordReebs. We'll see you next week, man. Appreciate it.
Good luck, guys.